How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. Great to be here. Great to see you.
So I love asking this because everyone in this room, or almost everyone in this room, I'm sure is a fan of this series. Otherwise, why would you be here? So what would surprise people to learn about the making of Blue Eye Samurai?
Oh, God. Well, first of all, this room holds special importance. This was the room where during COVID we brought in, hold it down.
No, right about here.
Right
I should
about
have said
here?
that. A little closer.
I have been directed by the best.
I don't know about that.
Thank you. It took a very long time to make this show. We met with Jane and decided all to work together, Amber and I, in March of 2020. And then about 18 months after that, we had our first footage. That 45 seconds from the first episode of Ringo and Mizu walking through the bamboo forest, am I right? And right here in this screening room, we showed it up on here with our Netflix execs, and everyone went, it's going to work. And for about 18 months before that, no one was very sure. So I think that might be something people would know. We weren't sure it was going to work.
And also, most of us had never met because we'd only been on computer, and we were like, "Oh, you're tall."
Yeah, you're tall. You're short.
You're short. Yeah.
You have legs.
Yeah.
This is where the magic happened. So.
Yeah, also, this is our first time doing a screening at Netflix headquarters in this room. And as you just said, this is where like the creative people are actually watching and discussing whether or not it's working.
That was it.
You know? So for each of you, what ended up being the toughest part of making the first season?
For me, I didn't know anything about animation, so that was hard. But luckily, we had Jane and a whole team of geniuses who taught us like what it actually would mean to make our show. We had written these scripts and we had these visions, the little movies that played in our minds, but didn't know what actually went into kind of all the many steps to make an animated series. There are a lot, and so we're taking that into season 2.
Schedule.
Yeah.
Schedule and budget was rough. But because we had never done a show of this kind of scope or this kind of visuals before, so nobody had a comp as to how much we actually would cost, how long this would take. So a lot of this was finding it as we went along.
From the sound end, I would say because the picture is so amazing, really doing it justice was like really intimidating because it looked just so amazing. And, because it's a different type of animation of that level, I really want to make sure that we did it justice by grounding it in a live production kind of feel, but then taking it to that next level of hyper-reality and all this action and really focusing. I'm a sound guy. I have no idea how this works. Focusing the action and really bringing it to another level to match what this animation was doing.
So you never know how something's going to turn out when you're making it. What has it meant for all of you to have a show so embraced by both critics and audiences?
We only just found out recently that people had seen it and liked it, so it was great.
It was surprising for us because we had this kind of like quirky little idea 16 years ago and never really, we're like, how are you to make a show about a Edo-period half white samurai who's disguised, as a man, to go all of those years and to then finally get the idea sold and then to spend, the better part of the pandemic working on it, and then all of the many steps and years that went into it, and then to see that people are watching it and liking it, and now we're nominated for an Emmy. It's like, it's pretty crazy and surreal for us. So, but thanks for liking it, I guess, if you do.
It felt like we were building something in our basement, and like for so long, and the neighbors like, "What's all that noise?" And then finally, we got to show people what it was.
I think for me personally, having worked in Hollywood for so long, and when it comes to representing culture in an authenticity, this was the first time I got to work on something that the culture is very close and dear to me, that we really got to represent it authentically, and I didn't have to fight for it. Everybody here and the Netflix executives all understood why it was important, and so the fact that the audience is embracing it is saying that the audience is ready to watch things and learn stories that are culturally authentic and important, you know?
I just want to touch on, you guys won 6 Annie Awards. You're up for a Peabody, I believe, and 2 Emmys. What is that like?
Season 2.
Season 2. We're so focused now on making season 2. Every once in a while we're like, oh yeah, this is great. Like, really, it was just we got to tell a story we were dying to tell. We really wanted to continue telling the story. I mean, Amber and I have been talking about this for so long. We know the beginning. We knew the beginning. We know the middle. We know the end, and we're really, really feeling privileged that we're going to get there. Well, we don't know about the end yet, but we know we get to do the middle.
I definitely have to ask a curveball, which is directed at you. A lot of people, if you don't know, you were involved in something called Logan.
Yes.
Would you like to tell people what you did?
I co-wrote Logan.
Right. So I definitely want to know what you thought about seeing Deadpool Wolverine, and what was your thought, and this is a minor spoiler, at the beginning of the film, watching Deadpool fight with Logan's dead body.
Dead body. That was the strangest, best form of flattery. Like, they cared enough to dig him up and use him as a weapon. No, we just saw it recently. We took our son, and we laughed our guts out for 2 hours, and it seems like we were in great company because everyone's gone to see it and everyone's had a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I heard it made $1 billion.
At least. It's still going. Yeah.
Yeah. People seem to like it.
Yeah. No, it was, come on. It was the greatest.
Yeah, listen, Logan's also fantastic. So it's just want to throw that out there. Like, you and James did such a great job on that. Myron, I have to ask you. So episode 6 is nominated for a sound editing Emmy Award. What makes this episode stand apart from the others? What was it about this one?
The 106. Yes. Well, as Michael expressed to us, this is kind of a unique one-off episode of sorts. It's in the story structure, but it's a very unique challenge in that episode. And it's Mizu working her way up to the top of the castle to get the Fowler, and there are all these different challenges that aren't really part of the typical story we're seeing on the rest of the eight episodes. And so everything in there was unique for the most part. And it's just quite a ride of its own. It's a real, how did you describe it, Michael? I think we just said to you, Myra, because by that point we'd gone through this episode together and we knew that you were kind of genius. We said, go nuts. And you and your team went to town and we had a ball with that one.
Yeah, I have to say, I had so much fun on the show. Rarely, we all work hard in this business, but I rarely have had such an opportunity to have such fun and work with such great people. And this isn't blowing wind up skirts. It's like, seriously, this was amazing. And everybody that worked on it, you guys and my team and Amy Doherty, the music composer, just, it's all fantastic. So we live for those moments. And the fact that it actually is getting recognized as well is really a real nice thing, because we all work hard and do our best. And when that gets recognized, it's really special.
You all come from a live action background. How did your live action background impact, influence, play a part in bringing this series to life?
I mean, on a couple of levels. Just to start, Amber and I, on the writing level, we came at it with just grounded emotion, grounded character. That yes, we're going to do really heightened, stylized things within that, but these characters were on a journey that was emotionally recognizable. And then on a technical level, I should throw to Jane on that.
I actually have an animation background, and I left Disney to join Marvel on their, one of their first movies, Avengers, and then was stuck in live action for the most part of it. And so Blue Eye Samurai is my first time back into animation, so I'd like to consider this my homecoming. And so what I brought back was the language of live action and camera. And so knowing both production, I basically was bilingual in both animation and live action. And so that gave me a lot of ideas to systematically, surgically include camera in certain pipelines so that we wouldn't break pipelines. So that was a lot of fun. It's like having a fusion restaurant, It's like I'm introducing new flavors.
If you don't mind, can you explain to people, because I know what you did at Marvel, but can you explain to everyone else what you did? Because it's pretty cool.
It's really cool.
So I design all the action sequences. And they would drag a couple of us that were considered the veteran team, and they would say, you have these characters, you have these things to play with, now go, come back in 2 weeks. And so we have to kind of think about all the action stuff. So the last film, I've done like 9 Marvel films. So the last one I did was Shang-Chi. And I did the scaffolding sequence, which was great because I used to play with them back in the old country and climbing all over them, so I knew what they would do. So, bring in authenticity to it.
When you think about your Marvel time and the 9 films you worked on, besides Shang-Chi, is there another sequence that you're like, I can't believe I just did this?
No, I was too busy because then they put me in another thing and I'm like busy doing that and I go, oh, yeah, there it is, yeah. But, the turnover rate at Marvel, because we were working on like film after film after film, we didn't get a chance. It wasn't until I came out of it and did I lift my head up and saw what I had done, and somebody pointed out that I've done that many Marvel movies. I just thought, okay, it's time to leave. It's time to do something else.
I interrupted before you could answer about your live action.
Oh, yeah. Well, for this, taking the live action, I really approached this like a live production to really ground the show. And what's great about animation is, it's a blank palette. You can do whatever, but the first and foremost goal for us was to ground it, make it really feel like it's real. You're not watching an animation. You're watching a real story that's shot with cameras and everything. And then from there, taking it and using... I've worked in animation as well, done some animation, that, you're able to start stretching reality a little more and more, and you get into this hyper reality thing where, we get into some of these fight sequences and that would never happen in real life, but you feel like you're immersed in this real live action. And the way it was shot, and I'll say shot, even though it's animation, it looks so real. You kind of suspend your disbelief that this is just animation, because it's not just, it's amazing. And so using that live production experience and how I would approach a live production mix and design is kind of the same thing brought to this.
2 of you are together in real life, and this is the first thing that you have done together. What took so long?
I mean, we've made some children together.
It's true. Yeah.
It was arguably harder.
I mean, we've been talking about things for years. I mean, I think there's just this ongoing conversation since we met over 20 years ago. Just, we love hashing out ideas, and he would read my stuff and I would read his stuff. And it was,
I don't think there's anything I've ever written that Amber wasn't my first reader and person who I would talk to about everything with. So
yeah. And so we started talking about this idea like 16 years ago, and just it took some time before like he became available and I became available and our children let us, work for a minute.
yeah, we wrote the first season in between making, all those like quarantine lunches when the kids were home. We're very good at pizzadillas now.
I'm curious, when you were developing the idea, you're figuring it all out. Do you know all the answers to all the questions, or are you sort of still figuring it out as you're writing now?
I mean, when you're talking to executives, you do.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, we know it.
We probably have different answers for that question too.
Yeah.
For example, do you know where it all ends? Do you know who the other white people are that she's hunting? Like, do you know where they're located? Those kinds of questions.
Mostly.
Mostly, yeah. I mean, we argue about some of the details still. Like, every once in a while I'll come in and say, I know what the last shot will be. And Amber will very wisely go, we have several years till that's a problem. But yeah, I mean, we went into the first season weirdly knowing beginning, middle, and end. We knew we wanted, like episode 5 was going to be a secret history of Mizu told intercut with the present day story. We knew that the 6th episode was going to be the quote, all action, but like, let's see how much we can get away with in that. We wanted each one to be its own little like special confection. But there's a lot we don't know as we go into it. It's an original, so we don't have a book to fall back on, which is both exciting and terrifying, because sometimes you do not know how deep the pool is. You're swimming and you could just sink and sink, and that makes you work harder.
So I love episode 5. I believe you wrote episode 5 and you directed episode 5, and this is your first time directing. I could be wrong.
It is true, although I should say, directing this, very much team effort. If I didn't have Jane, holding my right hand and my left and making sure I don't fall over it was like teaching a toddler to walk, and I'm still bobbling around. I wouldn't have even bothered trying if I didn't know I was supported by like the greatest team in the world.
I was going to say, with animation, it's definitely teamwork. Like this is not, you know what I mean? But I am curious, what was it like? Why did you pick this one to be the one that you're putting your name on as the first time you're directing?
Very simple. I read the script and it said, that's going to be like, I connected this one. I could screw up and it'll still be a lot of people's favorite moment. So, and here we are. Yeah. I loved this story, and Amber wrote such a beautiful script. That's really it.
Thank you.
So do you all have an opinion on whether or not it was her husband or if it was her fake mom that called the guards?
I don't think it mattered.
It doesn't, but I was just curious.
No? I mean, I think everyone was complicit in that episode.
I think society betrayed her.
100%, but I like throwing these questions out there.
Oh, I'm not going to top that. So.
I am so curious about the editing room with a show like this. How did the show possibly change in the editing room in ways you didn't expect? And how much was sort of changed or altered when you were like actually animating and you might have some final shots and you're like, oh no, this scene is not working? And how much is it all figured out before you're animating?
In animation, you do have to make your film up front in storyboards. And so we were very detailed in our storyboards and the way we cut them. Although this is so technical, but part of it is you have to also then leave some breathing room in your animatics, because what you get back is an interpretation of what that storyboard is. So it doesn't come back 100% like it, but it's close enough that we can work with it. There's definitely trims that we did, but I think generally a good amount of it stayed to what the script did and what the boards did.
Yeah, because in developing, as Jane was talking about, the pipeline to how do you do this level animation on a television schedule, the answer was really about precision. Measure twice, cut once, as Jane always said, certainly in the animation style, but that meant the emphasis on script was just tighter and tougher. We had to put ourselves through the paces. Normally you shoot something live action, you have coverage, you can put things together. We had to just make sure we only wrote what we needed to see, and we cut everything these are very lean scripts, really tight storytelling. So when we would go into the storyboards, we would only be asking for what we knew we needed, and very little changed really from that point.
Did you have any finished animation that ended up not making it?
No.
A shot or two here and there that just didn't.
No, not really, because they were so expensive and so exquisite that, we found a way to jam it in.
Yeah, maybe like 12 seconds total. There's no deleted scene. We wish there were
extras.
No.
So one of the things that people don't realize about animation is not only does it cost a ton of money, but some shots are way more expensive than others. Right. So what were some of the more expensive shots in this that you would not think are so expensive?
Oh, the spider monkey
shot.
Oh
the biggest fight we ever got.
We argued about that so much.
It's like the only thing we ever fought about.
Well, it was expensive because we redid it so many times.
Yeah. So we just watched an episode here. There's a shot where Mizu's in the hallway and it's the dollhouse looking down. And how's she going to get out of this one? And that was complicated as fuck. It turns out.
We can curse?
I just did. I don't know.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It fits for that shot. Yeah. And
Well, I mean, just to tell you a funny story, I also hired a live action director to do our episode because I wanted the story of animation to go out in live action of how hard it was, because mainly people from live action go, "Well, it's you just draw it, right?" So when he came aboard, he didn't realize certain cameras cost more money than other. And this was Alan Taylor from Game of Thrones that I invited to direct episode 107, which was beautiful.
Beautiful.
And it was interesting watching him put cameras in places that live action directors would put, and it really spun our show into this really beautiful feeling, like when a director knows where to put the camera and let this camera tell a story. That was really interesting.
But sometimes expensive.
But sometimes I have to say, no, we can't.
I think we had to build a cliff for him for one shot.
That's right.
The other thing that people just forget when they're watching, at least it's so so beautiful to watch every frame of this show, but people just forget that everything is a creation. There's nothing there that is, you have to decide on everything, and every episode is going to different places. At what point were you like, what the F are we doing?
Writing a road show was not the most cost-effective thing. That's in television. Anyone, if you want just basic television advice, don't write a road show.
No, but I think part of the challenge I really wanted to accept was to design an adult animated show that didn't feel animated or live action, and to have it live somewhere in between. And I think that's the beauty of animation and what you can achieve and what art can achieve. And so this was a very, I like to consider this more of an art house animation more than it is anime or adult animation itself,
How did you guys, I'm switching to something different. How did you guys decide on Blue Spirit as the company and the look and feel of the animation?
The look was already done in-house in our development pipeline. And then we had tests that went out to different vendors. And by far, Blue Spirit came out closest to what I had in my head. And I wanted... everything came out of who Mizu was, which was she's biracial, right? So she's mixed race. So this was an Asian show, and I wanted France, a Western company, to animate an Eastern show. So I wanted this to be a Eastern Western, and also because the filmmaking was so spaghetti Western-y, I really wanted to lean into the diversity and what everybody could bring, and I love French animation. They have such an auteur art house feel to it. So I wanted that to feed into our animation.
You were the ones who really got the facial expressions so much. Like some of the other studios did a nice job on the action, but the facial expressions, we wanted to be able to rely on storytelling through those micro expressions, not just those big emotions that you're used to in cartoons and anime maybe, but just the micro expressions of the eyebrows and things like that, they seem to really connect to that, and came out pretty good.
I'm going to give it a thumbs up,
Yeah, they're wonderful.
One of the things about I love Kenneth Branagh as Fowler. How did you decide on Kenneth and getting Kenneth, and then also the rest of the cast? Was it one of these things where you were placing voices against, from their previous work, or how did you decide on the rest of the cast?
Well, Kenneth Branagh was good fortune. When we were writing the first episode, I was on set mostly for Death on the Nile, which is a film I wrote, and so I was listening to him between takes, and we wrote that character and thought maybe we can ask and see what he says, and it's a congenitally kind person, and said yes, and was delightful to work with, and really enjoyed his time with us. We were screamingly lucky on our casting. We asked people, they said yes. We imagined who would be, we would say, someone like George Takei, and George Takei said yes. Someone like Ming-Na Wen, we should write her a letter. Oh, don't worry, she already said yes. It was the strangest thing. We said, someone like Randall Park. There's Randall Park. So, working with our casting directors, Margie Simkin, Orly Sidowitz, and, and then for Mizu, it was the question of who could be this, who inhabits it.
At the time we were watching or rewatching Pen 15. I've rewatched it a million times. If you haven't seen it, please do. It's hilarious. And Maya Erskine is so amazing. And I assume it's semi-autobiographical about, a kid growing up in Southern California being half white, half Japanese. And there's just so many little jokes that, resonated with me. And you could see the pain she felt growing up, feeling different, feeling othered. And she's so funny, but the pain is real. And she is such a genius. And I'm so happy for her. She's nominated for an Emmy for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And she deserves all the Emmys. But we were really just so lucky that she
exists.
She exists, and she joined our show. Yeah. Is her Mizu.
Myron, I have a question. Can you actually explain what a sound supervisor does?
Well, okay, so I got a great team of editors that I have 3 designers that help me out. They're all actually down in Australia. And then another main effects editor that gave me support while I was also a re-recording mixer on the film. Or film, I call it film. It feels like film. That's why I... And then I have a co-supervisor, Paulette Lifton, that also helped me really manage a lot of the different team coordination. There are days I couldn't spot that she would do the spotting with our lead designer, Sam Hayward. So she'd help me out a lot of coordinating on that. And then I had a team in Canada that I do Foley with when I pick up special projects, and they signed on. So I'm kind of overseeing all that, and I give them direction on what I want to see come in. And I time that out, and I if, hey, this needs to be better here or there, you kind of got to oversee, like, have a vision of what the sound needs to be to match what we're getting in. And so it's a lot of juggling of different people and their skill sets, and trying to figure out which one has the skill set for, like, say in 106, which then most of you, I guess, haven't seen yet, the zombie attack or the demon.
We got zombies.
The demon monkeys or the crushing submerged
Spoiler
cave.
alert.
And so you just got to see what all the people's talents are and bring them together as the sound supervisor. And then on the mix stage as well, most sound supervisors do not mix. I do. And so I'm also kind of managing what comes in when we come into the stage. It's all ready. And yeah, I will say what was really unique on this show, which I really give credit to all of you for letting me do this, was we had a schedule where we'd get the episode, we'd spot, and then they'd build this whole show. I would get it in as well as the score. I would mix the whole show. And then I would send a version to them, Michael and Amber and Jane, to review so I could get notes on it. It's like I pre-mix and then I did a semi-final on it. And then I'd go through, do those notes, and I'd send it back for another review. And then get those back, do the notes, and then we'd hit the mix stage. And what was really cool about there was no surprises for them on, oh, wait, this is a new sound. We really had it vetted out so then we could play on the stage. And I give them credit. I give Netflix credit for allowing me to do this approach, because this is not a standard approach. Usually what sound supervisors will do is they'll just have their team go cut the show as they interpret it, and then they'll show up on the stage and you'll mix for a couple of days, and at the end of that, you get what you get. And that definitely was this show was not deserving of that. And so Netflix really allowed us to do that and gave me the budget I needed to see that their vision was realized as best I could.
But I also think that this kind of back and forth is what led to why this show is so special, because it just feels fucking good. Do you know what I mean? Sorry for the language. But, were you about to add something?
I was just going to say everything on the show was really elevated, and that's I think it's well worth it. And if you took your time to elevate something, this is the product that you get.
For each of you, which scene or sequence of the 8 episodes of the first season was the one where you're like, this is impossible. How are we doing this?
Spider Monkey.
Well, in the same episode, the Naginata story. So Amber had written in this episode something we talked about, that we knew Mizu had these weights on her arms and legs, and we knew she was going to at some point somehow assemble them in a fight to make this super weapon that was going to get her out of a pinch. And we did not know how she was going to build it. We talked about it. Our design team brilliantly came together how the pieces were going to come apart and come off and come together. But it really, so we were like, oh my God, that's already been solved on a beautiful level. But how the physicality was going to work, we were banding about ideas. And Sunny Sun, our stunt supervisor, coordinator, said, let me take a whack at that. And he'd already nailed, all these incredible stunts in there, but that section was coming up. He said, I have an idea, let me try it. And then, Jane played it first and she said, you need to play this right now. And we're like, why? What's going on? Is everything okay? And she's like, just play. And we were like, oh my God, she builds it while killing people. She does it on the fly. And it was so impossible to solve. But what I love about the result is every department, there was a script. Yes, there was design. Yes, there was, and then, a directing stunt coordinator was able to solve that last piece of it and then make it so entertaining. That's the teamwork of film and television that when it comes together, like it actually makes you well up because it takes that. I mean, it was an incredible thing to come
Yeah,
together.
we're sitting here and getting all these accolades because of the team that we have, and they're so absolutely incredible. We couldn't do without each and one of them. They played such a critical role in why this show is so beautiful and so successful.
Yeah, it was. We had a lot of crazy ideas in script, and every time we finished an episode, Amber and I were like, "We got away with another one." Every episode is an escape from impossible situations.
I mean, one scene, it's tough for me to nail one scene, and I have to go, again, episode 106, which I'm up for, is just, it really, the entire thing was so unique that every step of every 7 or 8 challenges we had was all unique. You had to come up with this danger feeling and resolution and everything each time, and it had to sound, and it was all unique sounding, and you had to keep a pace and a momentum throughout this entire episode of it. You didn't want to feel start stop like this is a herky jerky, and we were able to really achieve that flow. So that entire episode was really like, you just looked at it like, oh my gosh. I mean, I think I remember talking to Michael going like, this is quite the thing, and he was like,
Exhausting.
yes. But so it those sequences and trying to just keep that momentum going, even though you're start and stop in a lot of challenges, and you'll see what I mean when you watch it. But it just pulls you in and through the whole show, and by the end you're exhausted almost, but you have no idea. You just went through that whole adventure.
So I love the character moments. It's what makes me care about everyone on the show. But let's be honest, the fighting scenes are also incredible. So talk a little bit about the designing the choreography, making it like shine as much as those small character moments.
So I have a martial arts background, and it would kill me if this was pretend martial arts. The fact that also it is a specific culture and it's a specific type of martial arts. That's why I hired a stunt team. More than likely enough, whenever I design a action sequence that has, martial arts in it, I'm always asked to perform it. So then why not just shoot the whole thing so the animators can have something to look at, and we can rotoscope from it, and nobody has to ask me what does this look like? Can you do it for me? That was the first idea of how this pipeline was going to change in terms of animation. And there's also lots of videos of me. Go ahead, you can tell that story.
Oh no! Just any given moment, you'd be walking through the Netflix, snack lounge, and Jane and a few of our team members would be hitting each other with swords and kimonos, and and doing it well, like getting the moves right.
And sometimes you'd rope random people in too.
Yeah, could you
Like
stand
like you?
Yeah, I'm going to my office, and she's like, nope, you're putting on a kimono, and so suddenly now I'm getting to play swords.
But
right.
it speaks to something we owe a lot to Netflix, letting us make the show, not only letting us make it at all, but making it right. That innovation of bringing a stunt team into an animated show was new, and early on they said yes to this. They did not need to. They could have said, well, that's not an expense that usually is incurred. Similarly, costume, the wardrobe in this is gorgeous because we hired Sudarat Larlarb, who's a brilliant costume designer I'd worked with before, and said, we want this to be sumptuous. We want the outfits to
and authentic.
And she went deep. She went to pulled deep books and museums and found patterns in kimonos that hadn't been seen in centuries. And that's what Madame Kaji wears in this episode.
Something else that I love is that, listen, I watch, and just like the audience here and everyone watching this Q&A online, we all watch way too much stuff. And one of the reasons why I loved this, one of the many, is that you kept me off balance in every episode. Like, I didn't know every scene that was going to come up, or a scene that I'm like, well, we'll eventually fight, but it's not going to be the fight that I'm expecting. And like little moments where like the bird gets killed and gets put back in the nest with the, you know what I mean? There's just so many little things that are so well done. Talk a little bit about writing these scripts and figuring out like where and when to keep the audience off balance and put in scenes that we're not expecting.
I mean, Michael always says when we're writing, we need more weird. We need some what the fuck. So sometimes we're just like, all right, well, what's the
Put that in an index card above your desk.
What's the what the fuck that we can put in this one? But really, I mean, all of those moments were just meant to just be little insights into Mizu, because she hide so much. So we needed to just like the bird, and then like, you just had to see that like moment of humanity right before a moment of near inhumanity.
And she's not much of a talker, so we always wanted to make sure we wanted the episodes to breathe, but you have to know when to do that. So being out in nature, take a moment, breathe, let the snow fall on your face. But at the same time, because those are the type of atmospheric moments or textural moments that fall out of series, especially like you'll have a pilot and then it'll suddenly get very conventional. And we really wanted to keep those things. Just always remembering it's from a point of view. What is that person experiencing in every moment?
The episodes range between like 35 and 60 minutes. Did you ever talk a little bit about how you decided on the different run times? And because, as we've talked about, every minute is so expensive. And did you ever feel pressure to get 45 minutes down to 35 minutes or et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, they were limited minutes. We had a set number of minutes not to exceed.
Yeah. So in animation, every minute is what you bid on, and so there was a pre-agreement on how many minutes we would have. So how we decided to spend those minutes is up to us. How we divided it, Yeah.
So we scripted accordingly. I mean, we knew we had 45 minutes per episode, which meant, and we knew we wanted the first episode to be a real solid hour. Yeah. And then we saved up some, and we spent that on the 6th episode, which we knew we wanted to be a really punchy, half-hour, breathless, more action piece.
I was just laughing because Michael comes in and he goes, this one's much shorter. It's 30 minutes, but by far the hardest episode of the whole season.
So things we learned in the doing in animation, that it is that is your commodity, how many minutes you have. So we spent a lot of time in the storyboard phase making sure we were exactly to time and being very careful with our pacing to make sure we use those minutes effectively.
What did you learn making the first season? You've talked about how you're working on season 2 right now. Mm-hmm. What were the big lessons you learned writing season 1, making season 1, that you're like, as you're writing season 2, we can't do this, or if we do this, we have like 2 minutes to be able to do it.
Well, as you commented, it was a road show, and every episode was a completely new. Like now we're mindful of like, oh, maybe we can do something where we can reuse that set, even though we'd really like to do it somewhere different. But
we're not. I know it's funny because like in all of our meetings with Netflix, we're saying how we learned our lessons, but it's Jane's like, oh shit, what am I? Yeah, no, we're
trying.
We're trying, real hard.
I don't think I learned anything new because this had been 2 types of production that I know really well jammed together. But I think now I know these guys better. And so now when they say, we could reuse that, right? I'm like, yeah, but they're going to dress it differently and they're going to do this. So leave some budget for that.
I think we all know how to work together very well.
Yes, that's it.
That's
like
the
better
learning
answer.
to trust your team and going to them early and telling them what your intentions are so that they know how to prepare for it. And also so that you can read their micro expressions of fear and know when to back off a little bit. Like say, can we do this? And they're like, they want us, so trusting your team is a big learning. Yeah.
I don't want to do spoilers because some people here have not seen all the episodes, but the first season ends in such a way that season 2 could take place in 2 different locations. And so I'm just curious, will season 2 take place in 2 different locations?
It takes place in many locations.
As Jane was saying, she would rather us to take place in 1. But by the way, speaking of spoilers, like episode 8 is literally titled "The Great Fire of 1657." So, spoiled. There's a fire. We shouldn't answer that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Where are you in the writing process of season 2?
We are writing episode 4 of 6.
Yes, there will be 6 episodes season 2.
And will the episodes, are you aiming for 45 minutes each?
Ish.
Yeah. It might be might be closer to 44.
If you're on,
Is that you're laughing? But like this
that's
show running is mostly math. No one talks about this. It's like all math, and it's hilarious.
Stay in school, kids.
Yeah.
so you're writing episode 4. Does that mean the first 3 are like, how close are they to being locked? Those first 3 episodes?
Pretty close.
We're in panic mode right now.
Yeah.
Because we still have a schedule and we still have a budget and we're trying to get all that to talk to each other. And, so we're in the beginnings of production and getting it started, and everything else is in the planning stages. So
I think it would have been fun if all the questions we had blood pressure cuffs on everyone,
Yeah.
and you would have watched Jane's just go, "You're asking about the work we're doing now."
What I am curious though is how long does it take? So you write a script. What is like the time frame? How does it work in terms of like how long does it take to animate an episode? How long like does each
Should have
part?
brought my schedule.
I know, because there's no one. It's a waterfall of
It's a
things
waterfall of-
overlapping.
yeah.
But the first season took 3.5 years from like starting it to it being on Netflix, and there are a lot of different phases in there. And at any given point, one episode is in 4 different layers.
I think if you measure pre-production should be about 9 months, and an animation should be about 9 months. But that's a half an hour schedule.
Right.
And if you like math, and this is 40 minutes, and it's a little bit shy of a year per episode from pre-production to animation. And then he gets it, so that adds a couple of more weeks to it. So yeah, like a year.
2 years, 2 weeks. I just want to point that out. 2 years, 2 weeks.
So the goal is 2026 for season 2, or do you think it's more 2027?
Currently, the plan is 2026.
Okay. Do you think you're going to make it?
We have to.
Currently, the plan is 2026. Yeah, it's our fondest hope. I mean, we would love to have it out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I also want to see it as soon as possible. So I'm just throwing that out there. What is the story? So you've talked in the past that it could be 4 seasons, it could be 3 seasons. What's ultimately your hope?
Currently, we're planning for 3 seasons. We have a second season pickup. One hopes the 3rd season will exist because we certainly have plans for it. And so, yeah, we're imagining 3 right now. I think we said 4 once in an interview, possibly with Collider, and it suddenly became like the lore. And it was, things you say when you're not used to being interviewed.
I'm going to leave that alone. Listen, I could ask you a million other things, but I don't want to get you in trouble or cause, you know what I mean? And you've been very generous with your time. So there's a multiple part thing. First, let me just say thank you so much for making such a awesome show that just happens to be animated. It's just such an incredible series. And I just want to say thank you to Netflix for putting it on the air. Congrats on the Emmy nominations. Everything, for real. I'm so impressed with what you guys did. And on that note, for people watching this online, if you enjoy the show, please spread the word. Use social media, tag. There's no Instagram handle, but just hashtag #BlueEyeSamurai and Netflix and whatever. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.